Thanks being here. Great opportunity to talk about a really important topic that may touch your future if you are involved in AI, artificial intelligence development, or if you even use it or deploy it. So I have prepared a short agenda for today with 3 chapters. And I hope that you will stay awake, because you have had a good party, as I heard already in the talks. So I want to talk about I want to divide my talk into 3 chapters. The first one is I give you a brief introduction into some of framework condition we are right now facing and we are living in. The second is then the status quo of the European Union AI Act that is coming into force in the near future. So it will touch really everything about artificial intelligence, as you will see in a couple of minutes. And then I would like to also give you some perspectives, maybe also for having later on a discussion about some questions that may arise from my talk. So let's go to the first chapter and to the introduction. So if you see nowadays or hear about artificial intelligence, then this picture is probably something that media portrays. So we have on this one side like unexpected possibilities, and from a tech guy's perspective, I studied informatics and engineering. I really have to say that I'm quite excited in these times. So from the technology point of view, everything is like possible today. And if you look really into the developments that we've seen since GPT 3.5 or ChatGPT, as it is called, from November last year, then you may have a feeling about what's going on there and what will be in future. So this is, of course, the one side of the medal, and the other is not so positive and so Disney World-like. So we are facing really special times in terms of we have security issues, geopolitical issues, wars. I mean, we have been all in the pandemics. We are all experiencing a lot of struggles in our real world. And if you look at technology, and especially at technology implementation and deployment, we have to face aspects of law, so law implications, intellectual property, as well as things like bias and everybody or aspects everybody knows about. And this makes it, on this second side of the medal, real challenging times. So there's a big contrast between this positive, really great times having technological breakthroughs, and on the other hand, our real lives where we have to cope with what is happening really right now. And from our point of perspective in the Artificial Intelligence Center, as you pointed out, I built in the past years here in Hamburg, we see a sort of decoupling situation. And this is always not a really good common ground for developments. And you can probably see it also in the news. If you look at posts like, for example, from the Forbes magazine, where it says that more than 300 million jobs will be lost, for example, and that we have big issues for whole of society and the working life that will change dramatically. And it's a really also this contrast of everything is possible or we have a doomsday is also seen in this kind of controversial discussions. So we have on the one hand profound experts that says, okay, this is really like the hope for humankind. And on the other hand, it's something like, okay, it could lead to an extinction of mankind. And beside this kind of discussions and also big issues rising from that, the developments and in particular the private investments in AI are in a sort of exponential status. So what we see over the past like 10 years is a massive uptake in R&D spendings on the one hand, but also in private investments into companies like OpenAI, but also into small startups. Maybe you are part of this whole AI scenario. And I could have also shown a chart where you see that not only in terms of economic progress, but also in terms of research papers being issued, there's a massive uptake in terms of artificial intelligence. And you can ask the question, why is it happening right now? And to describe maybe this kind of development, I want to point out that AI is not here since November 2022 when ChatGPT was really like blowing our minds away, but it's come a long way. We have AI research started in the 50s, 60s. We went from like rule-based systems that needed specific rules and algorithms that were built out of knowledge into the era or so-called era of generative AI, where AI systems are capable of creating content that is really like our human-based creation. And this is something that is really leading to some fundamental questions we have also as a society. So what is our role in future if this kind of development is going to be as fast as it is today? And the interesting fact is that like 10 years ago, I mean, it was mostly an era of labeling. I mean, it's a tech conference, so you know that labeling is or was really fundamental for the first developments of deep neural networks. And today it's about this era of generation where you can really have active AI systems that can be learned by self-supervised learning and techniques like that. And to point out and to show you about this kind of AI landscape, it's not just about OpenAI's GPT-4 or ChatGPT, so the 3.5 version, but we have several, let's say hundreds of foundational models that are being spreaded right now, that are being massively adopted, be it the open source models. You can hear almost like every day about new kind of models that we can experience, as well as the ones that are commercially available. And I'm sure you are already using in your also programming techniques somehow these kind of foundational models. And what I want to point out, and then I think we are ready to speak about AI regulation, it's that this is probably only the tip of the iceberg. So I assume that we will see a lot of multi-model AI systems, new foundational systems that will really occur in our daily lives and will massively also become essential to our work. And consequently, we can expect a more massive adoption of generative AI across society and industry. And this is why we can just summarize that this situation of this broad, massive impact of AI systems, as well as this rising complexity in the system, it's not about rule-based systems anymore that we experience like in the early days of AI and through the AI winters, but it's now a summer of generative AI, so the systems are becoming really much more complex in terms of parameters, in terms of data biases and things like that. And just to summarize the situation right now, it's from May this year. There are several benchmarks about what are the capabilities of AI when they are performing complex human-like tasks. And you clearly see that it's the newer systems are often matching or even exceeding human abilities across various metrics. So looking at psychology, theory of mind, to biology, to math, to even quantum computing. And this makes it clear, and leads us to a big challenge, and I personally think it's one of the biggest challenges we'll face in technology disruption. It's the alignment problem. So a really simple question, with a lot of tough implications. How can we somehow align machine learning and our human values, ideas, and society? And that's why it's clear that there was a worldwide movement. It was gaining a lot of traction in the generative AI era, so about since 2018 to 2019, in both scientific and industrial communities, to address the ethical challenges, and not only the ethical ones, I will come back in a few minutes, of these complex systems. And this is closely also related to the regulation. So as I'm a tech person, an engineer, and not a lawyer, I'm not saying that regulation is something that's my best and brightest hobby. But if you're looking at the complexity we are facing and the massive adoption, then it makes sense to think about boundaries. And if you do so, you have to do it interdisciplinary, of course. So we, as the technicians, need people from law, from regulations, from compliance, as well as from the socioeconomic standpoints, to cope with this kind of complexity and also to be aware of what kind of implications we will have now and in future if we're massively using these kind of AI systems. And the interesting fact is that if you think about something like a responsible and trustworthy AI, and maybe this European way done later on by the regulation, then you have to think about really tough dimensions. And 5 of these tough dimensions are just noted down here. So you have governance issues, you have things like ethics, security, fairness, and explainability. And it's clear that if you want to adopt AI in a trustworthy and responsible way, it's not enough to just take care of one. So from a technical point of view, I could argue, okay, if it's secure and robust, everything's good. That's software development, but it is not. And what is quite interesting is a study, interesting fact. This is shown here, and it shows the AI governance across different AI applications. And if you look at some of the AI applications, like for example, autonomous driving or emotion AI, face recognition, fraud detection, and then look at the risk factors, so bias or democracy, so rule of law, ethics, explainability, or human rights, then you see that there is a correlation, a strong correlation between, you can say, the fear we have as users, using these applications, and on the other hand, the abilities of AI. And so it's clear that we have to cope with it, because it is a matter that is so important, as you see, for example, in this kind of research. Coming to the history of the AI regulation, I want to point out that it's not like the OpenAI ChatGPT phenomenon, that it just arose around this date, but we're quite fortunate that, and can be proud of it, I think, that the EU is remarked for its global leadership in essential AI regulation, and then that this efforts has been in progress for over half a decade, as you see. So coming from ethics guidelines to 1890, to the white paper that is widely recognized, to also public consultation phases where the member states could deliver arguments and notes. We collected a lot of inputs there, or there have been a lot of inputs being collected, to the final proposal that we have right now. And what is quite interesting is that the fact that the ethical guidelines really influenced the today's regulation. And you see it as you experience or just saw the dimensions of responsible, trustworthy AI of this movement. There are some key requirements that have to be covered if you want to enforce AI systems to be trustworthy. And that is about, first, human agency and oversight. I think that's quite clear. Then a technical aspect, robustness, safety, of course. Privacy and data governance, also something that developers love. Transparency, diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness. And, of course, societal environmental well-being, as well as accountability. So this influenced a lot the EU AI Act. And when we look at the main objectives of the proposal for the regulation back in 2021, it was about ensuring to make safe and value-aligned systems. So exactly what we just pointed out. But on the other hand, it's also to boost AI investment with a legal clarity. And that's why I showed you the chart of the investments that are, of course, very important to boost the technology from a socio-economic perspective, and to make it attractive, for also R&D investments. Then we have, of course, the questions of governance and law enforcement. So rule of law should be standard, and of course unifying a market for safe and lawful AI application. That's the European idea, and I think it's quite reasonable. So the regulation will point out or will be in place not only if you're using or deploying AI, but if you're deploying it, if you're marketing it, so if you're part of the AI chain or landscape. It will also point out, and we will see that in a couple of seconds, strong requirements and obligations for high-risk AI systems. And of course, some transparency rules and schemes for monitoring and surveillance regulations. So looking at the status quo of the legislative procedure, we had a first commission draft, a first official commission draft in April 2021, and are currently in the so-called trilateral negotiation, trialogue, between Commission, Council and Parliament, and are expecting to be adopted by the end of the year or the beginning of next year. And afterwards, 24 months later, it will be like it will take effect. So it will be law, European law. And this is why we should deal with the topic. On one hand, but I'm quite sure you understood also my thinking about the other hand, why it's so important to deal with this kind of topics. If you look at the policy objectives, we want to ensure favorable conditions for development and dissemination of AI in the EU, as well as a leadership role, and this is something we can really discuss about. Yeah, does it really make us a leader in this domain, or is it more about something that will leave us behind? Of course, it's also pointed to the AI economy in the European Union, and it should be human-centered. Yeah. What is most important about the legislation about the AI Act is that it is an efficiency-oriented and therefore act, and therefore takes a strict and effective risk-based approach. So not everything will be regulated, as you see. So probably the minimal risk areas won't. Then we have limited risk, that is called specific AI. We have high-risk systems, and we will have an area that is not acceptable and that will be just prohibited. And here are some examples. I hope you can read it. It's a bit small. Looking at the prohibited AI, it's, for example, a social scoring system, as you may know from Asia. It's real-time biometrics for law enforcement purposes. So this kind of applications in terms of AI usage will be just prohibited. You see the other examples. Then there will be this high-risk AI dimension, and this, for example, critical infrastructures, where lives and health could be endangered, of course. It's education, safety components of procedures. It will be about employment and personal management applications, and of course things from the administration of justice and democratic processes. So this is the high-risk area, and then we have the specific AI, and there are some examples of, for example, large visual models that will make visualizations, deepfake, emotion recognition, and applications like this. And the main points that will be, or that you have to follow if you want to use in these areas AI, in these high-risk areas and low-risk areas, is the topic of, first of all, data governance. So data must be relevant, representative, accurate, and complete. I mean, this will be a question, how to achieve that, of course. Then it's transparency. And I mean, of course, if you're looking at neural networks and saying it should be transparent, then the tech guys who know about neural networks among us know that this is not possible. But what they mean, what the EU AI Act mean in terms of transparency is more about the characteristics, capabilities, limitations of the system, so to know what is really happening. Of course, the risks and information about test and training data. It's important. Then it's about design. So, of course, more the technical point of view about robustness, accuracy, about cybersecurity and resilience, the documentation, you all know that from good software practices, human oversight, and this is quite, that's why I put it in brackets, the capabilities and limitation of the high-risk AI systems, and to be able to properly monitor its operations. Yeah, a lot of AI systems that are put in place, I wouldn't underline this sentence. Then it's about the implementation of a risk management system and a quality management system. And this is a point that I'm not quite sure if this is realistic, for example, for startups and SMEs, who don't have like these kind of experts that are needed to make the risk management systems in any use case. So I think that there will be a lot of open discussions at this topic, if it's feasible and if it's just in reality, if we can do it. Then, of course, the completion conformity assessment procedures. And it will be also implemented for non-EU providers. Of course, if there are companies from outside, they have to make also make sure that they are Go conformity. What is quite interesting is that when this kind of legislation procedures begin, the hype and the development of generative AI was not already there. So in scientific domains, yes, but not in our real-world applications. So it was not so popular. And that's why they have, or the EU, just added these kind of obligations for providers of foundation models. And it says that you have to have a risk management system. We already saw this. Reporting obligations, of course. But then again, the transparency requirements and the obligation to ensure that no unlawful content is generated and created. And this is really a tough challenge if you understand the basic principles and the architectures of Gen AI systems. And this is also something that is just now a bit disturbing the industry, the publication and summary of the training data that is being used. Yeah, you know that the big models are very often not, or it's not easy to find out what kind of data they used, and you cannot just easily download the documentation about this. So just closing with a short perspective. So I think that we have a good European start in terms of really caring about our humanity values. We have frameworks, and we will see new frameworks for specific AI use cases. I think it's really practical and needed that we have some guidelines that we can implement and guardrails. There will be some certification bodies and procedures. We just can get help by making sure that you fit all these requirements that I showed. And maybe another fact is that there is not only the European AI Act, but of course a lot of more policies like maybe you've heard about the Data Act. But apart from these regulations, we have a lot of freedom in making decisions about creating and implementing AI systems. And given the newness and complexity of the AI technology, there are many uncertainties and ambiguities, of course. So this gives us a unique opportunity to act with self-determination in shaping a future guided by artificial intelligence in a responsible manner. That's what I believe. And I have some interesting questions about that may influence also and impact also your kind of work as a developer. So the big and tough questions are: how secure is the technology you're using? Who owns the data and profits from it? How transparent and unbiased are your approaches? Who is accountable for tech-driven decisions? And what ethical values guide the technology? So, yeah, I'm looking forward to a discussion. Thanks. This all.